You want to rock? Well, we're going to talk some rock with Glam Metal Legend, Twisted Sister guitarist JJ French. We talk the status of the band, and we look back at all the classic albums. And we need to help JJ's bandmate, Dee Snider, on his crusade to have AC/DC play the Super Bowl. I put a link to the petition in the description, so you better sign it. Here's the interview. Check it out. JJ, welcome to the 80's Glam Metalcast. How you doing tonight, sir?
I'm doing quite well. Thank you, Mike.
Great. Well, thanks for talking to me tonight. Why don't you tell us what you've been up to since the end of Twisted Sister? What's been going on with your business?
Well, I think that's a misconception with people. We stopped playing live, but that's it. The business of Twisted continues on. We're basically a licensing machine at this point. I don't know if you saw the Super Bowl ad with I Wanna Rock, but we just did a huge deal with Facebook to use I Wanna Rock, and we are now musically the most licensed heavy metal band in history. So this little band from Long Island that started 47 years ago now has its music in more TV shows, soundtracks, movies, movie trailers, commercials than any other heavy metal band, more than AC/DC, Kiss, Guns N' Roses. And of course, these are wonderful bands. But I have to say that I Wanna Rock and We're Not Gonna Take It are two landmark songs, and they have essentially stamped the 80s everywhere. And people love this music, and we benefit by it. But this is not an accident. This is something that I saw years ago, and all I can say is I'm grateful that it has worked out the way it's worked out, because as you know, Mike, as you read the stories all the time, how bands struggle with streaming and record royalties, with the drop of sales, and with streaming not paying very much, you're stuck with touring. And we stopped touring, so we have been able to turn our attention completely to the marketing licensing world. So I run the licensing division of the band, which is huge, and I also write for several magazines. I write for Goldmine magazine. I write a Beatle column. I'm considered a Beatle specialist. I write an audio column for a magazine called Copper, which is available online. PSAudio.com is a company. PS Audio is a high-end company, and they have a website, PS Audio. That's like Paul Smith, PSAudio.com. They have a website. You go there, and Copper is their online magazine, and I write articles for their online magazine, which are wide-ranging, covers everything from musical equipment, audio equipment, high-end audio equipment, my perceptions of high-end audio equipment, my perceptions of the music business, the industry. It allows me a gigantic swath of choices to write about. And I also have just finished writing for 5 years for Inc.com. It's INC, not INK. It's not a tattoo site. It's a business site. And Inc.com has published about 53 of my articles having to do with business lessons learned through the prism of rock and roll. And all of that dovetails into telling you that my book is done, and my book will be out later this year or first quarter next year. And it's a business book and it's a memoir. So it's both. I call it a bizwar. I coined a new phrase, which is a business book and a memoir, because most books about successful business people are memoirs and business books, because you can't write your story about business without telling the story of your life and how what you did in your life made you the business person that you are. And Twisted Sister has and always has been a business. And it's kind of counter to what most people think heavy metal bands, which are, sex, drugs, rock and roll, and fairy dust. But it's also not Gene Simmons either. Gene gets a lot of heat from the cynical standpoint of he's always accused of talking, kiss business, and not enough about the music. Well, the music matters to Twisted Sister, but we also managed to figure out a way to make a thriving business. So it's all-encompassing, and that's essentially what's going on right now. I'm really, really busy every single day.
Yeah, sounds it. So I guess essentially the answer to the question really is that Twisted Sister will last forever, basically, at this point, correct?
It will last, longer than Cher. So, I mean, when people say to me, by the way, what's the high point of Twisted Sister's career? Is it, the multi-platinum albums, of which we have many, or is it the tours, and especially the reunion that lasted 14 years, in which we wound up the last year, the crowds that we played to were anywhere from 60 to 110,000 people per night. So people ask me, what's the high point of the band's career? Is it all of that? Is it, when I hired D or something like that? And I would say, well, the high point of the career is that we made Blackwell's worst dressed women's list in 1988. So maybe I'll either have to live that down, or I will rejoice and wallow in the uniqueness of making Blackwell's worst dressed women's list. By the way, many people don't know what that is, because Blackwell, I think, died years ago. But this fashion maven, whose name known as Blackwell, used to publish his worst dressed women's list for years and years and years. And before the internet, before Instagram, before Twitter, before email, he would publish this every year. And if you made the worst dressed women's list, it was always made the news. So think about women who he would consider to be the worst dressed women. He would, make fun of Cher, or he'd make, let me think, who else could he make fun of? Just really ostentatiously over the top dressed women, and he would just say it's the worst dressed women's list. And so in 1988, we made the worst dressed women's list. So that's the high point of my life.
So let's talk about guitar a little bit. Who are some of your influences as a guitarist?
My brother started me out playing folk guitar, folk style Travis picking when I was 10 years old. And the Beatles came when I was 11. And between the ages of 11 and 15, I played in local bands as a bass player because I took upright bass in school. But when I heard the blues guitar playing of Mike Bloomfield from the Paul Butterfield Blues Band, it really inspired me and made me want to become a blues guitar player. So I bought a Fender Telecaster, brand new, on 48th Street in 1967 for $135, because that's how much they were going for in those days, because Mike Bloomfield played a Telecaster. So I fell in love with Mike Bloomfield, and then within a very short period of time, that morphed into Eric Clapton with the Blues Breakers and then Cream. And then because of Eric Clapton's playing on Strange Brew, he lifted the entire solo from Albert King's Crosscut Saw, so I got into Albert King, and a great deal, heavily. And then B.B. King after that, and then Hendrix after that. And Keith Richards gets thrown in there too, because I kind of went backwards and then became a giant Chuck Berry fan. And then you start getting into the blues, really into the blues, and you start going backwards, and you start getting into Muddy Waters, and then you're getting into Howlin' Wolf, and then that opens up Mississippi Fred McDowell and Son House, and you take it all the way back to Elmore James, and then you take that back to Robert Johnson. And these are all the artists that I listen to: Sonny Boy Williamson, Memphis Slim, Victoria Spivey, Lonnie Johnson. These are the people that infuse my playing. I'm a blues guitar player, and that's what I love to listen to. That's my classical music. I can listen to that all day long. So again, Mike Bloomfield from the Paul Butterfield Blues Band was the great super guitar player, and then Clapton. And by the way, Johnny Winter gets thrown in there. Roy Buchanan gets thrown in there. These are all giants in their field. These are the guitar players that affected me the most.
Where did the metallic piece of the sound come from, at least for the band? Where did that all brew from?
That evolved. Heavy metal was originally just really loud blues. Sabbath altered the chord progressions and it became more demonic sounding. But metal in its infancy was just really amplified blues. And if you look at AC/DC and ZZ Top, they're blues bands that are heavily amplified. But what happened was when Priest came out, Twisted Sister had kind of evolved from a David Bowie, Lou Reed, Mott the Hoople period, and then we kind of morphed into an Alice Cooper-ish period. Rocky Horror came out, and then we kind of morphed into that image a little bit. And then Priest came out and had a profound effect on the band. Priest and AC/DC had a huge effect. So if you listen to our records, you'll hear Priest and AC/DC. And Priest, the metal that Priest played was about as metal as the band got. You know, we were not composed of shredders, and it didn't. You know, Van Halen was a great guitar player to listen to, but it wasn't the focus of what the band was. Although, as a bar band, we played Van Halen songs, and we played Ozzy songs, we played Sabbath songs, and Rainbow songs, because that was the current music of the day. But that was the evolution of the sound of Twisted Sister. You can hear it in Shoot 'Em Down easily. For example, I mean, Shoot 'Em Down was almost a perfect example of an AC/DC type of tune.
And it's funny you mentioned Alice Cooper, because I think as a kid, you know, D, the visual image of D, I never really thought much about Alice Cooper, because he, you know, I got into music in the 80s, but, you know, I went back and got into all the old Alice Cooper albums, and when I listen to a lot of D stuff, I can hear where there's times where his voice has a little bit of the Cooper vibe, or even lyrically, yeah.
Yeah, but also from a songwriting standpoint, Cooper wrote incredible anthems.
Sure.
And D wrote anthems, you know, and I think we love $billion Babies and I'm 18 and Under My Wheels, School's Out. Alice had mega hits that were all great, and D wrote anthemic songs. You know, I think Slade, Alice Cooper, even Kiss with Rock and Roll All Night, Party Every Day, these were anthemic songs of their era that kind of maybe rubbed off themselves into the band, but for sure Slade had a huge impact on the band, and Alice Cooper, because Dee loved Alice's image. Eventually Alice, you know, played on one of our albums, It'd Be Cruel to Your School, as a duet with Dee. We performed it on stage with him. Their drummer, Michael Bruce, played with us on stage one night, their chief songwriter. Neil, the drummer, auditioned for Twisted Sister at one point when we were between drummers. So we have a strong kinship to Alice Cooper.
When you go back and you look at the songwriting credits, I think most songs are written by D. Did you guys write and it just didn't make the album, or what was the dynamic with that?
Well, I can only speak for me, and I don't really write. My songs are too quirky for Twisted. They were never going to be. They were never going to be for Twisted. You know, when the band started, and I was in the first version of the band, I always relied on somebody else to write and sing, because I'm not a singer and I'm not a writer. So I needed to hook up with a singer and a writer. And Dee turned out to be a phenomenal singer and a phenomenal writer. So for me, I never had a problem with it. I think Eddie and Mark wrote, and whatever the political winds were that didn't get them on the record, I can't speak to, because I was never affected by it. It wasn't like I said, hey man, here's a song, let's try it. I always said to Dee, what do you got? What do you got? You know, what do you have? And he just kept getting better and better and better.
What's crazy too is it's not just the lyrics, but it's the melodies. When you look at something like "Come Out and Play," that verse melody, it's almost like classical music. You know what I mean? He's got some crazy melodies that he has.
Well, he's not a schooled musician, but he's a musician and he's a songwriter, and all this stuff was in his head, and it kind of, you know, but he always did. Going back to the very first anthem which we recorded, which is called "I'll Never Grow Up Now," and then we did "Bad Boys of Rock and Roll." These were singles that we released on our own record label. These were anthemic songs. So when we finally had the hit with "I Am, I'm Me" in England, that didn't surprise me that was a hit. That was the next evolution of Dee's anthem writing. You know, "The Kids Are Back" was all that, as well as "You Can't Stop Rock and Roll." That's also very anthemic. So when it came to "Stay Hungry," there was full of anthems in "Stay Hungry." You know, you've got "We're Not Gonna Take It," "You Ever Want to Rock," you have "Burn in Hell," Captain Howdy's "Street Justice." I mean, the whole album is a classic album. SMF is an anthem. These are great songs. I mean, that album was a perfect album. By the way, that album is coming out on a Mobile Fidelity super pressing for the 35th anniversary. It will be out in a couple of months. You can pre-order the "Stay Hungry" super pressing on Mobile Fidelity vinyl. And I don't know if you know, but the biggest lacquer printing plant just burned down in California. I don't know if you know about this. This is a real disaster in the record world, like really a bad thing. The company that makes the lacquers that records are pressed with burned to the ground. Did you know this? Mike, did you know this?
No, I don't think I knew this.
Okay, this happened 2 days ago. This is a true disaster. unless there's only one other plant in the world, and it's in Japan, and they've got to figure out what they're going to do. Otherwise, the manufacturing of vinyl is going to stop.
Wow.
Which sucks, because vinyl is now starting to overtake CDs. Vinyl is coming back so big, but people should understand that the vinyl, that the lacquer, the plant that creates the lacquers that the records get pressed out of, completely burned to the ground 2 days ago in California, and that's going to be a severe setback to record collectors, especially.
Well, let's talk a little more about Stay Hungry, because this was a mammoth success. Like you said, it's a perfect album. It's a heavy album. What are some of your memories of that time? You got to have some great stories from that era.
Well, we had a hard time finding a producer, which sounds weird, but we kept getting turned down by producers, and which was frustrating. They just didn't believe in the songs. And I think Werman saw that the commitment from the record label was strong, but I'm not sure Werman believed in the songs all that much either, because he came to their first rehearsals with a bunch of cover songs for us to do. Sounds crazy, right? It sounds crazy. Sounds crazy. You say to yourself, how do you not recognize Burn in Hell and Don't Let Me Down and We're Not Going to Take It and I Want to Rock? But he didn't. He came with cover songs, which really offended Dee, and really kind of offended all of us. We were like, what's up with that? We think these songs are good. So it didn't start off the relationship too well between us all, to use the overly used phrase, to be quite honest with you. But to be quite honest with you, it didn't start our relationship with Tom Werman off extremely on a high note. And so we kind of struggled through the recording. We recorded it in Cherokee Studios in L.A. We started in New York at the record plant, and during the basic tracks of Burn in Hell, there was a fire at the record plant. I know it sounds crazy, and it sounds like a story, and it sounds like BS, but it's true. And we weren't getting much done, because we're all from New York, and I think we were being distracted by dental appointments and just what happens when you're local and, you got to deal with your crap day to day. So Werman wanted to go back to California. He wanted to go to Cherokee. Werman had enormous success with Cheap Trick, enormous success with Ted Nugent, enormous success with Motley Crue. So he was the hottest producer of the day. And we all went out to Cherokee on Fairfax off of Sunset Boulevard and recorded most of the album, and then started to mix, I believe, in Quincy Jones's studio. I believe that the engineers that we were working with had worked on Thriller. And Thriller, of course, was at the top of the charts at that point.
Sure.
Like number one for, 6 months or whatever. And they were telling stories about how the record label didn't think there was any hits on the record. And it just made me think of how nobody knows nothing. You know what I mean? Like, so nobody knows nothing. When it comes to the music business, I'm sorry, but who the hell knows why anything works? You just don't. And I was looking at it and seeing that Rat was having enormous success with Out of the Cellar, and they were on Atlantic, and Atlantic was having a hot streak because, they had AC/DC, and Rat comes up, and of course Motley was big, and Quiet Riot led the way with with their album. So I think I looked at it and I said, wow, like we're the next little jet on the runway. If we make the right record, we'll be the next jet to take off. But it really wasn't until the videos were done that we realized things were going to get crazy. And when we did the videos and they hit MTV, things went crazy immediately. The videos defined MTV. The videos defined how the world perceived Twisted Sister, good and bad.
Right.
I'm going to tell you that because it wasn't necessarily for the good. We got trapped in how people perceived us. We were not what we appeared to be on many different levels. We were what we appeared to be in the video, but that was a small slice of what the band really was. It was a hard-bitten bar band from New York who kind of got swept up into the entire glam 80s hair LA thing, which we had nothing to do with. We didn't know any of those bands. We never met any of those bands. We never really toured with any of those bands. If you think about it, Mike, us and Cinderella were the East Coast hair bands, for
Right.
lack of a better word.
Sure.
And the whole SoCal thing was not us. We didn't sound like it. We didn't play like it. We didn't know them. We'd run across these guys occasionally, but we had nothing in common with them. We were older than they were. These bands were in their 20s. We were already in our mid-30s. We were straight. We didn't drink and do drugs. They did. We had no relationship with them because we didn't want to hang out with them because we weren't getting stoned. I'm not saying we're better or worse. What I'm saying is that there were different lifestyles. And our lifestyle was completely different from their lifestyle. So we didn't share, we wouldn't be invited to parties because we wouldn't go to them anyway. So we were very isolated. And we were isolated and became famous, and then we became misunderstood because one half of the people thought we were totally out of our minds, crazy, gay, like raving, alcoholic, drug addict, homosexual. Right? That's one perception. And then the other side of it was like, that's the straightest band on the planet Earth, and nobody wants to hang with them. So it was I think you can imagine, if you didn't know any of these things, you may be in shock right now to hear them. I have no idea, but that was the weirdness of the times.
So let's talk about Come Out and Play. And you're a business, you're in the music business. Like I said, you're kind of the business guy of the band. When you look back at that album, what do you think went wrong there? What went wrong with Come Out and Play?
What went wrong was that Leader of the Pack, which was a song that always worked for us in the bars, didn't work as a single. It should never have been released. Right. We should have led with Fire Still Burns, with a video that was like Fire Still Burns. It was a mistake. I mean, it was a mistake we didn't recover from, because between the PMRC attacking us for being the worst thing that ever happened in the world, to kids understanding that maybe we were the straightest band in the world, we weren't legitimately a bunch of drug addict alcoholics, we actually were just regular guys who just dressed up crazy and ran around stage. We got kind of stuck in between, and then a video comes out that nobody really understood, even though for us it was funny because we used to play the song in the bars. It didn't work. And that was really the beginning of the end, and we never recovered. So even though the album went multi-platinum around the world in several countries, and we toured extensively on that album, it was very demoralizing. The times were changing anyway. And by the time it got to Lovers for Suckers, it was kind of like, that was our Let It Be. That was our breakup album.
Right.
We just couldn't wait to get the album done and be over with it. And that was the end. So that's kind of like what happened. It was a long way up. It was a 12-year battle to get to Stay Hungry. 13 years to get to Stay Hungry. And then it exploded in a megawatt explosion. And almost as fast, it just kind of went. So the fact that we then stopped for 12 years with no intention of ever playing again, and because of a confluence of circumstances and coincidences, the main one being 9/11 and the band deciding to reform to do a benefit, that altered everything, brought the band back, and with it brought interest in the band really big. Then we did the Christmas album. Then everyone started licensing our music like crazy. And then between the licensing and the finding out of Twisted Sister, and then us headlining these gigantic shows in Europe where we had never headlined before, all of a sudden we came back and everybody wanted the band to headline. So we headlined. I think out of the 125 shows we played since we came back, probably 100 of them were headlining these massive stadium shows. It gave our credibility back. And then the documentary came out. And the documentary told the story and legitimized the band in the eyes of everybody. So I can sit here with you on the phone talking about something that's interesting to people, whereas if we didn't come back in 2003, you and I wouldn't be having this phone conversation.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Do you think back, if we think back of like the mega success and then everything that follows, does success complicate things?
Well, you know what? First of all, I was not a teenager when things hit. I was older and had a more mature view of it, so I can't say that the mistakes were made out of ignorance or stupidity of youth. We made calculated decisions that were wrong, and then when the whole thing fell apart, there was a gigantic lawsuit, and Dee and I had to both file for bankruptcy and start our lives all over again. And it was very, very tough because everybody in the world knew who we were, and we went bankrupt, and then Dee went on his own path. I went on mine, and we had to reinvent ourselves, and that's the key to survival is reinvention. That's what my book is about. My book is called The Twisted Method of Reinvention. And it's TWISTED. The 7 letters of Twisted are the rules of my life, which is tenacity, wisdom, inspiration, stability, trust, excellence, and discipline. Those are the 7 rules. And the bottom line, Mike, is that Twisted Sister was turned down more times in a bedsheet and in a whorehouse, and have come back more times than Freddy Krueger. So we know how to survive, and survival is like life. Twisted Sister started 47 years ago. So if you said to me 47 years ago, JJ, how long will the band last? I'd say, I don't know, 5 years.
Right.
I think if you said to Kiss, and you said to Judas Priest, and you said to AC/DC, we all came around the same time, 73, and you said to any of us, how long is your band going to last? We'd say, I don't know, 5 years, because at that point, the Beatles were the only band that ever got to 10 years. They were 10 years when they split. So that was about as long as you'd ever want to get. I could never have anticipated that 47 years later, my band is bigger than ever. Our records, our streaming is bigger than ever. My royalty statements are bigger than ever. The Super Bowl ad was the biggest thing we've gotten, and we've gotten hundreds of sync licenses. These are the licenses you get when you license your music for various products. Hundreds of them. We just had our best week in history last week. Go figure.
That's awesome. So real quick, just I want to talk about Love Is for Suckers for a minute. Do you like that album?
Okay.
I know. Did you play on a lot of it?
I know this is going to sound weird. I don't know how much of that record I'm on or Eddie Ojeda is on, for that matter.
Right.
I know that there was a drum machine, so we didn't have a drummer because Joe Franco programmed a drum machine, and I think Reb Beach played a lot of the guitar parts, and I have no idea how much I'm on it. I don't really listen to it. It was supposed to be a Dee Snider solo album.
Right.
It was recorded during the band's demise, like things were falling apart. I think some of the songs are good. I think Wake Up the Sleeping Giant is a great song.
Amazing song.
For example. I think it's a really good song. I think there's some really good songs on the record. It's not my favorite in terms of memories of the band, but then to be fair, I don't play Twisted Sister music very much. I don't think bands play their own music very much. No. Regardless of what it is. I think, you know how actors don't see their own movies?
Yeah.
In an interview, they go, so what'd you think? He goes, I don't know, I never saw my own movie. And you go, how do you not see your own movie? I don't understand, Well, I get it now. I don't need to listen to Twisted Sister. I played the songs, 80,000 times, and if somebody comes to my house and wants to hear it, I give them the CDs and say, take them home. Not to be disrespectful, I just don't need to listen to it. I'll listen to other things. But Love Is for Suckers is the least played Twisted Sister record. I'll tell you, the record, You Can't Stop Rock and Roll is my favorite Twisted Sister record, by far. I think it's Dee's as well. Dee and I talked about it recently. That's our favorite record, and I think Come Out and Play is an underrated record, but it's really good.
So you mentioned Gene Simmons a couple times, and I thought I read something that you jammed with Wicked Lester, or you played with those. Did you ever do anything with Wicked Lester, or the early days of Paul and Gene?
I was one of probably, 20 guitar players who auditioned.
Okay.
For them. And it was nothing more than that. Some guy mentioned it to me one day, and I said, I auditioned, because they're New York guys, so a bunch of New York guys probably auditioned for it. Then it came out, JJ was in Kiss, and I went, you know what, I never said I was in Kiss. I never ever said I was in Kiss. This is so stupid. I've been hearing this for the last 40 years, ever since I made the statement. When someone said, well, did you ever, another band? I said, well, I auditioned for Wicked Lester, that became Kiss. That became I was in Kiss. No, never. Never was. June of '72, I met Gene and Paul. They were auditioning guitar players. Hung out with them for a couple of weeks. Jammed with them for a couple of times, and that was it. Sum total of that. That was the sum total of the connection.
Have your paths crossed much throughout your career?
One time we were playing Nassau Coliseum with Dio, and I think Gene and Paul came down to the dressing room, and I think that's it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only time. And that was in 1977.
Okay.
So that's the only time I think my paths have crossed with them.
Okay. Did you
which is 40 years ago.
Yeah,
so.
Super long time ago. Talk a little bit about the Christmas album. That had to be just like a shock that was going to be a big success, wasn't it?
Total shock. We were making a joke like this is just going to bomb. Like we were making a joke like, Twisted Sister, the reunion, it's going to end with this record. I said this is a guarantee that this will end the reunion. And so we did it because we thought it was a fun thing to do, and we found a record label that partnered with us, and everything was fine. But we thought this would end the career completely. I even thought it was a joke. But people, see, I knew going in that people like to give presents at Christmas. They don't like to give downloads. So they're going to really give a CD or an album, if you make it. And bottom line is the record sold 250,000 copies. And so we're real happy. Everyone loves it. Every year it's played all over the place. The album is, I'm super happy with the record. I'm super happy. I think our live concerts that we filmed, the 2 DVDs, Vegas and at Starland Ballroom, are amazing. It's my favorite. It's really actually my favorite. Not that it's my favorite, because it's not really a Twisted Sister record. You know what I mean? It's covers of Christmas songs, but it's probably the record I could listen to the most without wincing, because I just think we were smart as hell. When we did the record, we did it. Dee said something to me early on. He said, I wanted to do a Christmas album back in 1984. I wanted Iron Maiden to play a song, I wanted Thin Lizzy to play a song, I wanted AC/DC to play a song, I wanted Sabbath to play a song. And he said, so let's make this Christmas record like the way they would do it. So if you listen to White Christmas, it's arranged the way we thought Iron Maiden would do White Christmas. And if you listen to Silver Bells, it's the way AC/DC would do Silver Bells. So if you listen to the songs are definitely performed so that they would sound like the way we imagined our favorite bands would sound if they were going to do a Christmas album. Like I think Have Yourself a Merry Christmas, the opening. That's the way the Ramones would play a song.
Yeah.
When we start off to go ho ho ho, let's go ho ho ho. That was our homage to the Ramones. So we had all these homages going on the Christmas record to the bands that we love the most. We love Judas Priest. We love AC/DC. We love Iron Maiden. We love the Ramones. We love Black Sabbath. And on and on and on, which is Lita Ford's on the record, singing I'll Be Home for Christmas, because that's what we wanted to do. And then we did the 12 Days of Christmas at the end with a tattoo of Ozzy, right, with Ozzy. So we had a hell of a good time, and it was great to perform it on Broadway. It was great to perform it in Vegas. I'd still love to perform it again. I think it's a great show.
Yeah, I mean, and people underestimate, well, maybe at the time, but they don't anymore, the power of Christmas music. I mean, look at the Trans-Siberian Orchestra. I mean, radio stations commit to Christmas music, right after Thanksgiving. So it's big business.
Yeah. Well, we called it the Transvestite Siberian Orchestra.
That's awesome.
We had a great time making that record, and the record sold extremely well, and it's a standard now. And ever since then, every metal band has done a Christmas song.
Right.
They went, wait a minute, I can do one. So we had a great time, an amazing time doing it.
So when you look back at your whole career, what's your biggest takeaway life lesson from your days in Twisted Sister?
Oh, I think, like I said, we reinvented ourselves over and over and over again. I think the only, rock and roll bands are the epitome of entrepreneurship, and when you're an entrepreneur, the good thing is you don't have to take orders from a boss, but you better make your own life. And that's the pressure. So, you make your own life, you make your own choices, you live and die by them. And reinventing ourselves over and over again is what I'm happiest about, that we've succeeded. We've continued on as a company. And even though AJ has passed away, he's a forever partner. So we all benefit financially from this. And we're just grateful. I'm grateful that there's a career. I'm grateful the world cares. This was an idea that was started in the basement of New Jersey in 1972. right? The idea of this band started in the basement in New Jersey in 1972 by 5 guys, 4 of whom nobody knows, and me. And that idea, that germ of an idea, became Twisted Sister. You know, the same way that McDonald's hamburger started out with Ray Kroc, you know, in a foxhole in World War II, thinking I'm going to open up a hamburger chain, or Walt Disney saying I'm going to make a cartoon. It all starts with an idea, and then you got to convince 3 other people, and then they got to convince 10 other people, and they got to convince 100 people, and that's what rock bands do. So I can take a very long philosophical look at this and tell you that I'm proud of the fact that the band has a career. I'm also proud of the fact that me, Eddie, and Dee have been together for 42 years. Mark has been a little less, like 39. So for me, it's 47 years. For Dee, me, and Eddie, it's 42 years, I think. And with Mark, it's 39 years. That's a legacy, my friend. That's a great legacy to be proud of.
It sure is. Well, JJ, thanks so much for talking to me tonight. It was a great conversation.
Well, thank you so much, man. I'm happy you contacted me, and good luck.
Wow, that was some great insight from JJ. Well, let me tell you what we've got coming up on the 80's Glam Metalcast. This Sunday, it's going to be an interview with Great White's Mark Kendall. And then next week, we're going to blow your mind with an episode with Joe Lynn Turner. So you know what you need to do. Hit subscribe. Thanks for listening. Rock on!